Hello. Do you want to play a game?
There is an NGO, a non-government organization called Diverting Hate, which is funded by, among others, the Department of Homeland Security. You'll see that written right down here. Who, by the way, should be utilizing our tax dollars to protect or to tighten up our borders, keeping us safe, securing our nation from the very real threats that we are facing. These very competent people over at Diverting Hate, with the support of the DHS, have again put me on a list, crowning me number 2 male supremacist right up here on YouTube.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and I'm doing a breakdown and a reaction here on a channel called MTR, Mediocre Tutorial Reviews. If you've never seen his content, I suggest you check it out. It's pretty good. You saw it at the beginning. There's actually a male supremacy list, and there's a group called Diverting Hate, backed by Homeland Security, and there's actually a male supremacy list that they've compiled from YouTube channels. This is a real thing, and this is pretty, I know a lot of you might think it's stupid, which it is, but it's also very serious. If you're not familiar with MTR's podcast, there's nothing extreme about it, but that's really not the point here. That's really not the point of this list. I'm going to play a little bit more of the video, and then I'm going to come back and break this down on what this is really about. This gentleman is not extreme at all, but he's been labeled as being a male supremacist. And this list is real. It isn't it's not something that's fake. It's actually, they've actually got a department that's out there actually grabbing YouTube channels, and depending on the content that is being spoken about and put on the channel, it goes on to this list, a male supremacy list. This just lets me know that this group has not really been doing their homework. If you look at this list here, like, MTR is rated higher from this male supremacy scale metric, higher than Fresh and Fit. And I don't know if you guys out there are familiar with Fresh and Fit's content, but if you're familiar with their content versus MTR's content, it's not even close on the type of things that are said on these different channels. They have MTR rated above Just Pearly Things. And if you're not familiar with Just Pearly Things, she has said things way more radical than MTR has ever said. So this just lets me know that this organization did not do their homework. They're just basically throwing darts at a dartboard. It looks like they just went after the most popular channels. If you look at the subscriber count, you can see some people are approaching 1 million, some people are over 1 million, some people are at 500,000. So it seems that they're just targeting the most popular YouTube channels who speak and do videos on the same or similar content. And the thing that I'm seeing in common is that these channels speak against feminism, and these channels tend to speak more towards a traditional society with traditional gender roles. And this is what they've compiled as a list of male supremacy. So before I get too far ahead of myself, let me play some more of this video, and then we'll come back and I'll break it down to give you my thoughts.
The actual list right here, you'll see me up at number 2. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself, which is, what the hell is male supremacy? They actually have written definitions of exactly what it means, and we're gonna go directly through all of that. And truth be told, honestly, I'd be happy to wear number 2 if I thought that this shit was accurate. But these smooth brains put me above, amongst others, Fresh and Fit And just Pearly Things. Really? Just Pearly Things, the platform who actively advocates for women not being able to vote? Which begins, by the way, to tease out the sheer incompetence and bias of the authors of this report. But even outside the incompetence, the authors use the tried and true methods of positioning content creators like myself as being a hate group, so much to the extent that it's laughable. So we're going to go through components of this case study today that is reflective of me, myself, and my channel, because what they've attempted to do is to bucket all content creators together as if we all believe in the same things, or if we all teach the same things, or if all of our audiences behave in the same way, label us all of these weaponized words such as extremist and male supremacist, which, by the way, is a derivative of white supremacist, but they're utilizing those words as weapons against content creators that were restoring power to men. One of the major goals of my platform, along with having a critical discussion of understanding the nature of both men and women, is to give men the information to live a joyous life. Provide them information in regards to the inadequacies of the family court system. Provide them information that tells them that they are in a patriarchal regime and should feel bad for being a man because of that. To provide them with the correct information that no, your masculinity is not toxic by trade, but there are biological factors and reasonings to the way that you conduct yourself in a woman's response to that. And to think that there's government agencies that are funding hiding this information from you is sickening. But never.
All right, guys, so I want to touch on something that he said that is vital, that is very important. He spoke about information. He spoke about information being given out on his channel, and he spoke about information purposely being hidden. Guys, there's one thing we have to realize, that freedom of speech, freedom of expression is really just an illusion, guys. That's really all it is. You really don't have freedom of speech, and you really don't have freedom of expression. Let me explain to you. There are a lot of people. We can use this video specifically as an example. They have a group that they created that's going after certain YouTube channels. Now, these people on these YouTube platforms are exercising their freedom of speech and their freedom of expression. But it's really not free, because an agency has been created, a list has been compiled, and discrimination and bias practices have been put in place. What does this mean? If they're able to compile this list, if the government is able to come up with an organization or a committee or a council to compile a list, they'll go against certain YouTubers, and YouTube has an algorithm. Don't think for a second that government doesn't lean on different companies, different platforms on what it is that they push and what it is that they do not push. This YouTube algorithm is like, it's a magical mathematical calculation. Nobody can really explain it. There's a whole bunch of videos on YouTube with every person that does the video saying, this is how the YouTube algorithm works. This is how the YouTube algorithm works. What I'm simply trying to say to you is that there are things and forces at work behind the scenes that most people aren't even aware of. Most people aren't aware of it because, number one, it's hidden, and number two, most people are too lazy to actually dig for the truth. Most people want to be handed information, and whenever you're too lazy to dig for truth, they will always hand you the lie. And people know, especially people who are wealthy, people who are powerful, they know that most people are too lazy to actually dig for truth. So they're happy to hand out misinformation, disinformation, and straight out actual lies, because most people are just too lazy to look in to what really is the truth. So these companies, these quote unquote algorithms, when the government decides to go after somebody or go after a particular group, they have many ways of doing it. Number one, they have court systems. Number two, they have laws. Number three, they have the law enforcement officers who enforce these laws and bring you before the courts. So the government has a lot of ways of dampening and curbing freedom of speech and freedom of expression. If you can be blackballed, blacklisted, if you can have your channel or your video suppressed or damn near moved out of existence so no one sees them, then you don't have freedom of speech or freedom of expression. It's not free. It comes with a price. It comes with a cost. So it can't be free if when I exercise it, there's consequences and loss that comes with it. That's not free. That is not freedom. If it comes with a cause, if it comes to a consequence, if that's what comes with me exercising this particular freedom, then it is not free. If I can lose my livelihood, if I can lose my business, if I can lose my job, then you can't say I have freedom of expression. You can't say I have freedom of speech. We need to understand, guys, that this is not a free country. This is all an illusion. We have not been a free country for a very long time now. Speech has always been muted. Speech has always been manipulated. Our news is manipulated. We all know that we don't get the truth when you turn on the news. And I don't care which side you lean on, because I'm not political. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. Both sides telling us lies. Both sides are feeding us propaganda. Both sides are feeding us untruths. And most people are just too lazy to actually dig for the truth. So freedom of speech, freedom of expression is an illusion. There's a quote by Elijah Muhammad, who was a Muslim, and there was a quote that he said, and that quote was, and I'm paraphrasing, it may not be word for word, but I'm paraphrasing. He said, if you give the people dirty water, they will drink it if they're thirsty. But if you give the people a choice, they will choose Islam. What he meant by that is, when men are given the choice, he was confident that they would choose Islam over any other religion. Now, let me bring this to the topic, and let me bring this to the subject matter that we're dealing with right now. There was a man by the name of Kevin Samuels. Before he showed up on YouTube, there was no other YouTuber who was expressing himself in the way that he was, who was direct as he was, and who actually said the things that men actually thought and then men actually believed. This lines up with that Elijah Muhammad quote, when men are given the choice. Because before social media, before all these different podcasts with men, way before Kevin Samuels, men never had a place where they could actually be honest and speak out. I mean, let's be honest. The only place men could be honest with one another is spaces where there were no women. So maybe at a bar, maybe at a pool hall, maybe at a poker game in their friend's basement. But men really had no outlet to actually be honest. If you look at old talk shows like Ricky Lake and Jenny Jones and Phil Donahue and Montel Williams and Oprah, anytime a man actually opened his mouth to actually be honest, he was always beat down, he was always booed, he was always shamed for just saying exactly what it is he thought. So men have, for decades now, have always had to suppress what they really thought and what we really think. And then came Kevin Samuels. And Kevin Samuels actually provided a platform for men to speak freely. and not be judged, for men to actually be masculine and say things that they thought but dare not let come out of their lips. So when men were given a choice, they chose Kevin Samuel in droves, and they stopped drinking the dirty water that they've been given for decades because they had a choice. Prior to men's platforms, prior to podcasts, prior to Kevin Samuels, men had no choice. The only thing they were given was dirty water, so that's what they had to drink. But the minute they got a choice, the minute men were given a choice and a better option, they stopped drinking the dirty water. That's basically what that quote was that Elijah Muhammad was saying. That if you starve a group of individuals, if you starve them of nutrients, if you starve them of things that are actually beneficial to their body and to their mind and to their spirit and to their mental and to them emotionally, if you starve them with things that don't feed them intellectually, that don't feed them spiritually, if you starve them of these things because they're so starved, because they're so desperate, because they're so weak, they'll eat anything you throw at them. I don't care what you say you won't eat today. If you didn't have anything to eat for a month, for 3 weeks, you will eat things you wouldn't even have ever conjured up to think you would eat. And that was the state that men found themselves in. They was given dirty water. They was drinking things that were not beneficial to them. They were drinking things that actually went against the very nature of who we are. They were drinking and participating in things that were not beneficial. The one thing that I don't agree with MTR that he said in this video, he said before I paused it that we are in a patriarchal regime. That is actually not true, guys. We do not live in a patriarchy. This is actually an illusion as well. Feminism, this is the whole basis of their movement, that they live in a patriarchal society and that things are unbalanced and that things are unfair. Guys, we do not live in a patriarchy. This is not a patriarchal society. Words mean something. People can't just go around saying this or saying that because it fits their agenda or because it sounds good. Words actually have meaning. And whenever someone uses a word, they should understand and know exactly what that word or that term actually means. A patriarchal society is a government and a society that's controlled and ran by men. A matriarchy is a society or a government that's ran and controlled by women. This is exactly what we have. What feminism tried to tell you is that because most judges are men, because most CEOs or VPs of companies are men, because most mayors are men, because most police officers are men, then that means they live in a patriarchy, that this is a patriarchal society. But guys, that's not true. That is not what determines who controls a nation or society. What determines that is laws. Laws determine what kind of society you live in. And if you look at the laws, they're unfairly balanced to go against men. Look at crimes. A man commits a crime, a woman commits the same crime, same identical crime. The man gets a harsher sentence, possibly the death penalty. Women rarely get the death penalty, and they always get a reduced or a more lenient sentence. Men are always held to a higher standard when it comes to the law. Look at family law. Men pay child support, men pay alimony, overwhelmingly more than women do. Look at child life laws. Look at the right to see who gives birth and who can bring forth life. Women can opt out of being mothers. They can opt out of motherhood. Men have no option. Men can be forced to be fathers. And even if they decide that they don't want to be a father, they cannot opt out of it financially. Women have all the options when it comes to life. Prenuptial agreements, which are supposed to be solid and ironclad, can be broken. So they have laws where you can break a prenuptial agreement. We see this happen all the time, guys. We just seen this happen with Tyrese. You see this happen with all kinds of celebrities and athletes, where they'll have a contract in place and then the contract just gets voided. There's some kind of loophole and the contract just gets broken. We've seen the same thing happen with Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby had a contract and an agreement in place with the prosecutor. What happened? A new prosecutor came along and then broke that contract, broke that agreement. Men are victims of fraud on a daily basis. We all know what fraud is. When most people think of fraud, they think of fraud from the financial standpoint. A financial crime, a white collar crime, or maybe a low level check bouncing, check fraud crime. But that's not the only thing that fraud is. If you sign a contract and you falsify statements or information in that contract, that's breaking the law. That's fraud, because you are presenting yourself to be something that you're not. Men are victims of fraud on a daily basis. Shaquille O'Neal's ex-wife just came out and said, I never really loved him. I never really loved Shaquille O'Neal. I was never in love with this man. I never really loved him. This is not uncommon. Most women that marry athletes and entertainers don't love them. It's not them that they love. It's not them that they after. They're after the resources and they're after a lifestyle. But that's fraud. Pretending to love someone, pretending to care for someone in order for you to gain access to resources is fraud. How about women who step out on their man, step out on their husband and get pregnant by another man and don't tell him, and he ends up raising somebody else's kids and he don't find out until they're an adult, or maybe he finds out when they're teens, whatever the case may be. That is fraud. You deceived that man into believing that that was his kid. And when that man takes a DNA and find out that the kid's not his and he tries to go to court, the courts tell him, well, since you've been there from the beginning, it's your kid now. Even though DNA evidence says that the kid's not yours, he still has to pay child support. Does that sound like we live in a patriarchy? Does that sound like a patriarchal society to you, where the laws that we have in place, the laws that we have established, go against men and punish men more severely than it does women? If you want to see a true patriarchy, look at countries in the Middle East. If you took the women in this country, particularly the women who are championing feminism, and put them in countries in the Middle East, they would kill themselves by the end of the week. Those are true patriarchies. Those are true patriarchal societies, where the laws benefit the men and the laws do not benefit the women. Our society is not like that. Our society is flipped. Male teachers sleep with high school girls, get punished more severely than when women teachers sleep with high school boys. I just did a video on a girl in California who smoked marijuana with her boyfriend and then wound up killing him. She stabbed him like 60 something times. And you know what she got? You know what her sentence was? Probation. Probation for taking a life. And guess who the judge was? A man. See, so it don't matter how many judges are male, how many of the CEOs or VPs are men. That doesn't matter. What matters and determines the society you're living in is the laws. Who do the laws benefit, fairly or unfairly? justly or unjustly. Back in the 60s, we had the civil rights movement because black Americans weren't afforded the same rights and weren't afforded the same options that white Americans were afforded. So we had a civil rights movement. It would have been real stupid if a black American back in those times said that, America was a fair and just country. They would have sounded real stupid and looked real dumb. So as men, we need to stop saying that this is a patriarchy, because it's actually not. The laws are actually against us. They're not for us. So we need to change our language. We need to not fall for what women that are feminists, what they say, and how they try to twist what is actually reality. They're using positions in companies and positions in government to try to tell you we're in a patriarchy. When in reality, even though most of these positions are held by men, the laws favor women heavily. So guys, we need to really get that through our heads, that this is not a patriarchy. Another proof of that is, this is a list compiled of channels they say are male supremacist lists. There are a lot of women, there are a lot of female podcasters and YouTubers that say the most ridiculous and outlandish stuff about men. There was one YouTuber who's not on YouTube anymore, but used to talk about aborting male babies. So I would love to see a list of female supremacy channels. I would love to see that list, because the name of this site is Diverting Hate. So if we're going to divert hate, we should divert hate for everybody. But this organization is targeting men. It's targeting specifically male content creators. Never mind all the female content creators out there that be saying the most vile, despicable, hateful stuff that I've ever heard, but it don't shock me. You know what? You can't shock me anymore. I'm gonna do a video on Sean Combs, Puff Daddy. A lot of people were shocked when they seen that video. I wasn't shocked. I was surprised that they caught it on camera. I was surprised that that camera surfaced, but I was not surprised by his actions on video. Because that is just the type of place and the type of society that we're living in now. So that didn't shock me. So when I listen to these female YouTubers say things like that, and you should abort male babies, and teaching women how to commit fraud against men, and Cardi B going on YouTube and TikTok saying how she used to drug men and rob them, and yet no charges are being brought forth, but yet men are being locked up and arrested for things that happened 30, 40 years ago, and Cardi B is still making albums and no charges have been brought against her. Does that sound like a patriarchy to you? Does that sound like a society or a government that men control? Don't fall for the titles. Look at the laws, guys. The laws will determine what kind of society you live in. So don't let them pull the wool over your eyes or do sleight of hand. Don't fall for the trap that, well, there's never been a female president, or there's never been a female this, because you have to look at who the law favors. And whoever the law favors, that's the society you live in.
With reviewing this case study, here is my call to action for all of you, because this report is proof that I am being targeted. And although I have faith that YouTube isn't as biased as what this organization is, as these NGOs are, you just never know. All it takes is somebody to not actually review my content, to get past the titles, to get past the thumbnails, and someone who believes that anyone that thinks that anybody who's anti-feminism is a hate mongerer can look at reports like this and I'm gone. demonetized, deleted, what have you. So because of this, I have gone out my way to create a community, a free community, and this will be where the MT Army resides, which will become the best self-development community in the world. We're going to focus on 4 main pillars of growth: your financial fitness, health and wellness, identifying your purpose, and solidifying your masculinity. Much more information on that later, but click on the link down in the description box down below so you can join. Men need a safe space in order to improve. It's clear that these public spaces are no longer safe. So click in, beam up, and let's get active.
All right, so it sounds like MTR is creating another channel where men can congregate and speak freely and express themselves. And basically what he's saying is we're being watched. We are being watched. And when I say we, I'm talking about men in general. You are being watched. What you say is being recorded. What you consume is being recorded. We are being watched. So don't think that you're just freely roaming around YouTube. They have certain, there's certain books. Let me say this because I think this can explain it better. There's certain books that they have in the library that if you as an individual decide to buy those books or check those books out of the library, that actually, these things are watched. They actually pay attention to who buys certain books and who reads certain books and who checks out certain books at the library. Like anything that has to do with Hitler or has to do with fascism, communism, Nazis, terror, making bombs, any of that kind of stuff, that stuff gets recorded, guys. That stuff is recorded by the government. They have certain markers that they look for on who to watch. This is how they try to stop what they perceive to be threats to national security. So you are not freely watching or listening to anything. You're not freely reading anything. Anything that they determine as being a threat to national security, whether it is realistic or not, you are being watched. You just seen a list of YouTube channels. You've seen the subscriber count. They even listed the rate of growth that the channels are growing. So you think they don't have a list of all the people who subscribe to these channels? They know who subscribe to these channels. They know if they have channels. This thing is very, very deep. And I'm subscribed to some of them channels. So they already, they know I am. And if you are, they know you are too. So we are being watched. The same thing that we as a country and as a nation accuse China of doing, of watching their citizens. See, the difference between China and the United States is China do it out in the open. They tell their citizens that they're watching them, and they block them from doing certain things. They don't let them express certain things. So they're very open about what it is that they're doing to their citizens. The United States are hypocrites. They act like they're not doing anything to their citizens. They act like they're not watching them, that they're not listening to them, that they're not monitoring the information that they read. When in reality, that's exactly what they're doing, and this organization proves it. They are watching everything we do, everything we listen to, everything we consume. They are watching. We are being watched. So guys, leave your thoughts below. Let me know what you think about this whole diverting hate website that have the channels listed as being hate channels. And let me know what you think about the list. If you think any of those channels are actually, if you actually do think they're male supremacy channels, or if you just think it's a whole bunch of nonsense. But in any event, guys, don't be confused. Make no mistake, this is not a patriarchy, and it has not been for decades. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not trying to be dark or pessimistic, but guys, I don't believe this country will ever go back to any kind of traditional, organized structure that actually works. I don't think we'll ever see traditional gender roles again. You'll always have a pocket of people who operate in that manner, but I mean in general, as a society as a whole, those days are gone.
I rest my case.